Today I'm going to be making a wooden tri-square with just hand tools. This is a bit risky since it actually has to be square, but let's see how it goes. This is a great project to use up your scrap wood since it doesn't take a lot of wood at all. First I start by marking the length of the square. Now I can cut it down in the bench hook to get a 90-degree edge. Now that the piece has been cut to length, I need to make a bridle joint. This is the part that will house the straight edge. So I take a knife and mark both sides of the piece. Once this is done, I can come back with the mortising gauge and transfer the lines accurately. Now I can use a different marking gauge to mark the depth of cut. I start cutting just next to my line. This will make sure that I don't make the bridle joint too wide so it ensures a good fit. I cut across the end grain before cutting diagonally along the line that I can see. Once I've done this, I rotate the piece and do the other side. Now it's just time to remove the waste. I do this by staying away from my line as long as possible and chopping down. Once I've established a stop cut, I can pop out the waste like this from above. Once the waste is removed, I take my chisel and do a 90-degree cut going halfway on each side. Now for the straight edge. For this I used a piece of teak and I used a marking gauge to make sure that it's the width I wanted it to be. I ripped it down using a Japanese Ryoba saw on the saw bench. I stayed away from my line so I can plane it down afterwards. Now that everything's planed down and flat, I decided to do a simple decoration. For this I just cut an angle off the straight edge. Now it's time for the glue up. For this I just used some Type Bond 2. I also brought another square as that will come in helpful later. Now to put it together, I slide it in and then I check with a square to make sure it's square. I guess you need a square to make a square, or at least it helps. Now that the glue's dried, I wanted to add a bit more decoration. To do this, I scribed a line and then I used my chisel to make a slight bevel at the top. I wanted to add some dowels. This would strengthen the joint and also make it look pretty cool. So I marked out 4 locations and stabbed them with an awl before drilling out the holes. When drilling, it's a good idea to have the piece supported at the back. This reduces the chance of blowout, and you can also drill halfway through the piece before flipping it over. After adding the dowels, I sawed them down close and finished up with a chisel to get everything nice and flush. Now for the satisfying part, I added a homemade blend of paste wax. This includes mineral oil and beeswax, and I just love the way it looks and feels in the hand. Well, the square is square, and it works. I actually prefer using this over my metal one when I'm marking with a knife. The wooden edge gives a better surface to register against. If you like this video, please feel free to follow for more.